Hey Quilties, it's Karen Marchetti. This time on Dual Process, Jody Robinson and I are working on a Bargello quilt. So lots of little pieces in this one. Grab your printable, we both got an idea for you, and we'll get started. Hey guys, it's Karen. So on my version of the Bargello, I'm going to alternate between two different stitches. Only so that I don't get bored, and that's the worst part when I'm quilting, is I get bored when it's the same thing over and over again. So as long as I'm switching between two different stitches, it'll hold my attention and it'll also add some visual interest. I'm going to apologize now because the way that I'm going to stitch this, we're going to have a lot, and I mean a lot, of start and stops. So lots of tying on and tying off, but it looks really cool. So we're going to let the finished effect supersede all the starts and stops. So I'm going to assume I can get probably this much of the quilt done. Okay, so I'm going to start. The first stitch I'm going to do is just a straight line from here to here. Okay, you can use a ruler. I find it a little bit easier to just kind of eyeball it. So whichever you're more comfortable with. And then we'll cut through the seam line, and we're going to skip this. Oh no, we'll do it. We might as well. We're going to assume we're using one color thread. So on this one, I'm going to do loopies just from one corner to the other. Cut through. The next one is that straight line. The next one is the loopies. And it doesn't matter if there's 2 or 3, whatever you feel comfortable with. Next one will be a straight line. Next one will be loopies. And they get a little skinnier, so if you want to make your loopies kind of small, it makes it a little easier. So we're going to say this last row, and we'll come up with the straight line, and when we get to this one, we're just going to put just a little point at it. I'm going to kind of draw myself a line here so that I don't go past, because I'll just keep going because I'm only drawing. So when I get here, I have to tie off. Okay, on this one, I'm going back up with my loopies. Cutting over straight lines, tying off, because I don't want to go through the seams. That'll really mess up the visual effect that's going to happen when you quilt it. So I'll tie on over here and do my loopies in this next one. Cut across, straight lines, again tie off, loopies, and we just continue this all the way as far as we can. So this one I can cut through, straight line, tie off, do our loopies, cut across, straight line, I'll tie off, loopies. So you get the idea, there's lots of tying on and tying off. Cut across, straight line, and we get to that half one and we just put a little point. And hopefully my straight stitch lines are a little straighter than my drawn lines. So this one I can cut through and do the loopies. And here I just put one single loop so I can change direction. You just want to keep the stitch in that color column. I guess that's the easiest way to say. Over here, straight line, just a little point because we're changing direction. Cut through, loopies, one single loop because we're changing direction, straight lines, little one, loopies, and then here just a little tiny straight line. So now we have to fill in these open areas. I mean, you could roll a little bit, but you're only going to be able to roll to here to get this. So it's easier if we just do the tie on and tie off. So I'm over here, so I'm going to keep going on this side first. Tie on, tie off, straight lines, cut through, loopies, straight line, loopies. Okay, so now I can, oh no, I can't roll yet. I have to finish this section over here. What was I thinking? Loopies. I was all ready to roll that quilt, and that never happens in real life. Never. So I'm just going to finish this up, tie on, tie off, straight lines, and I just keep repeating this to fill in the section. A little short one, and the loopies, and a little short one. So now I'm ready to advance the quilt. Can I erase that line? Okay, so I erase that line, and now I'm going to roll the quilt, and I'm just going to do this in fast forward because otherwise we'll be here for an hour. You guys get the idea, so I'll just do this in fast forward, and I'll bring you back at the end. Okay, so that last little straight line. And you see, they are totally straight lines. Well, if we had used a ruler, they'd be perfectly straight. But you get pure impression that these are curved, and they are not. They are just straight line, corner to corner to corner to corner. And it just gives a really cool visual impact. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Hi everyone, it's Jody. This time we are working with the Bargello quilt, which I generally would probably look at this quilt, and you might as well, and think, you know, there are these areas in here, so maybe I should, you know, come up with something to put in there, maybe depending on the fabrics or whatever. Maybe something like feathers or leaves. But the other thing that I happen to notice on this one is if you look at this, and it's because of the way that they're pieced, you know, to create this illusion of movement and how, you know, this appears to like go up, right? And it gives the illusion that it goes down in here and then back out. And the reason that happens is if we look at the piecing, it's because these are bigger. The piecing itself, these rows and squares are bigger, they get a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until the very center, these very, very narrow pieces, that's what creates that illusion of this being rounded areas. So because I personally like to do a lot of straight line quilting, and so the more of it that I do, I start to realize how, you know, and different things that you can do by using something as simple as a straight line. And this is going to be a really, if you look at the completed picture of what I did, you might look at it and think, she didn't do anything on there, but I did. So what I'm going to do, and obviously this is oriented this way, if I were going to quilt this quilt, I would load it with this at the top of the machine. So I would load it the other direction, because what I'm going to do is, because the piecing and the way it goes creates that illusion, the other thing that's just going to emphasize that illusion is if I quilt all of those lines, meaning the ditch between each row, and that's it. I don't want to do anything this direction because that will change the look. But if I simply stitch the ditch of these, it's going to emphasize exactly what the optical illusion that the piecing does. It's now going to add texture to that, because these lines are going to get tighter, 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 and then more open as you go out. So of course this is going to appear to recede even more, while these will come forward because they're bigger. So it wouldn't make sense for me to load it as we're looking at it. I would load it the other way, and then once I have it on the machine, I would use my ruler, or you could, depending on how well the quilt is pieced, you might choose to use your channel lock. And you can, if you use a nice long straight edge ruler, you'll zip right through this. The piecing generally in a Bargello quilt is quite small, and clearly they would not be wavy because I'd be using a ruler. It's just really hard to draw them. I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to repeat that for the absolute entire quilt, but I think if I can try to make them a little bit neater over here, you'll see how, if you just focus on these lines, you can see how different, right? These are much closer together, and then as they go out, they get farther apart. So it just is really going to emphasize that optical illusion. And I think it's a way to, most of this type of quilt that I've quilted for people are very busy print fabrics. And so I think that sometimes if you try to put too much stuff on there, it's just going to get lost. Where with something like this, it doesn't matter if you see it or not, because the texture is what you really want to see. And you really, you don't need to mark anything. You don't have to think too much. You just need to grab a ruler and follow those lines. So I hope maybe you guys might give that a try, and maybe the idea of using the straight lines on not just this quilt, but a lot of other quilts might give you something to think about, and you might play around using that on another style quilt as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed today's designs, and be sure to join us for the next episode of Dual Process.